your hands up and walked away.
I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are Velocities in Music VIMTV. Today we're going to review the brand new 2011 release by the band TV on the Radio entitled 9 Types of Light. This is a band that I've loved for a long, long time, and their next album has been, you know, they've done things differently each successive release. And this album continues that trend and builds off of their previous album that came out in 2008, Dear Science, which garnered a lot of respect, garnered a lot of new fans, and got a lot of people to look at TV on the Radio in a different light, which is kind of interesting to me because I felt like this band's always done something interesting since their inception. But 9 Types of Light, in my opinion, I'm just going to come out and say I really enjoyed this album, even though I've had a very short time to fall in love with it. And while I'm probably not going to give this as high a score as I will in the future after I listen to it even more, I still feel like this is probably, it's not my favorite, but it's probably, I think 9 Types of Light is TV on the Radio's strongest showing as an album listen. I feel like these songs, this collection of these 10 tracks flow very well. I feel like this album is albumized in a way that it complements. You have softer tracks following more intense tracks, and it shows just a great variety. Now, Tom, I know that you didn't quite have the same reaction that I did, but you still enjoyed this album. What were your thoughts?
Well, TV on the Radio, you know, they're just a great band.
Right.
And as you said, you know, they've been consistently good,
right.
But I also want to point out that they've been consistently about as original as you can get in today's music scene. I mean, there definitely are their influences. I get a lot of Prince kind of vibe, kind of that funky, you know, especially with the singer going in the falsetto every now and then.
He has a great range.
Yeah, which is interesting because I don't even like Prince, but I love TV on the Radio.
Sure.
But I like that they keep it interesting, they keep it fresh, adding in horns with the electronic sound.
And on top of guitars.
Exactly. But this album, I definitely agree with Jake that this is the most flowing album experience that they've put out. Now, I don't want to just compare this to their past work, but I think it is worth saying that compared to 2008's Dear Science, which to me is a fantastic record, I know I like it a lot more than Jake, I definitely think this flows better as an album, but I think that the standout tracks on this album are not as strong as the standout tracks on Dear Science. However, I also feel like the couple of tracks that I don't like quite as much from Dear Science dip down and are actually a little worse than the worst that this album gets. So while this album doesn't have moments that make me go, oh my god, this is amazing, like Dear Science does, it also doesn't have really any moments that piss me off. It's just a good album to listen to, shows a good progression for the band. At the same time, yeah, I didn't really attach to it as much. I just felt like, you know, this is impressive songwriting. The compositions, the arrangements are very good, but it's just kind of, there it is. There's an album. And I think that a lot of people are going to have trouble really attaching to this.
Sure. And I know that it's getting a variety of responses out there, which is normal when a band kind of does something. One thing that I'm noticing that a lot of reviewers in general are saying, both written and video, in our community, is that, you know, they're looking at certain tracks that they really like in this album, and certain tracks that maybe don't belong or don't fit well. Well, my theory on music is if you had 10 or 11 tracks all on one album, and while they're all consistently good, are different, that doesn't necessarily mean they should be on a separate release. Doesn't it? Don't you want to have a variety on an album? Doesn't that keep it from getting too monotonous, too boring, too uninteresting? I mean, it depends on what the album is. If you're going for a concept release, you kind of want things to be have some theming and consistency throughout, but when you have these different, like, these songs really build, like, they build and crescendo to these giant climaxes at the end, and to capitalize on that momentum, if they did that on every track, what you'd have is the Joy Formidable's latest album, and it just loses it. It loses some of the energy and the momentum that it builds if you don't learn how to capitalize that. TV on the Radio do an excellent job on 9 Types of Light of doing that by providing a low moment, because that contrast is what makes the climax so much more fun to listen to and so much more appealing to the listener.
And to tell you the truth, I'm really surprised people are saying that, because I think that this album does a better job of it than their past work. I thought, and don't get me wrong, I love Dear Science, but it's kind of a jumpy album.
It is jumpy.
It jumps around from track to track.
And because of that, it's polarizing. That's why we have a displacement between our two.
Exactly. And this one, I just feel like flows a lot better. Those tracks that are different, I feel work in album context better.
And Tom, I tell you what, something you mentioned about the instrumentals. First of all, I think the instrumentation on this album is fantastic. fantastic and a highlight for me, definitely, which TV on the radio has always been. Now, it's also very moody too, and that's something that I felt like they were able to capitalize a lot more on here. It seemed that more focused on the mood than Dear Science, and I'm a mood guy. I love that, and that's why Desperate Youth is always going to be my favorite albums, because the purpose of that album is to establish mood.
I do feel, though, I feel like the biggest drawback of this album to me right now, after like 4 listens, that might change over time, but the moody spots that you're talking about, where they're going for that emotional appeal, just aren't as striking. I feel like in the past, honestly, on all 3 of their other albums, they're able, when they hit those slower songs, they really just boom. Yeah, and even like Family Tree, and even like, in a weird kind of way, even like Ambulance from their first album, really just hit me a lot more than these tracks do.
And one thing I was going to mention, and got a little sidetracked here, is that whenever I hear a good mixture of electronics and then real instruments, when that can be done in an aesthetic manner that's complementary and doesn't sound like instruments clashing, I just go nuts for it. And here you have 3 different types of instruments. You have your typical rock band, guitar, bass. You have horns and saxophone, and then you also have electronic elements all being mixed in. These songs also are very rhythm-centric, which is something that I am really liking right now, and actually kind of compared it to Tomboy in my head, since it's in this set of what we're listening to right now. I noticed parallels between those 2 albums, not that they sound exactly alike. Vocally, I also thought that this is probably the vocalist's best performance yet. I mean, I really got into the vocals here. They were big, they were versatile, they were always well-written and always complimentary as to what the song was doing. I feel like that a lot of the songwriting here is just what I'm looking for, and a lot of these songs just were catchy. Now, I probably make this sound like this is the perfect album. I'm not quite there yet, and as I was telling Tom before we turned the camera on, that I haven't had this album long enough, I think, to really become like emotionally attached to it, which is what I think it takes to really to put the album in the upper echelon, like this is the best album of all time. It has to grab you emotionally. This one really isn't doing that yet. And I think that's going to vary person to person, so. What are you thinking about scoring this?
I'm going to give it an even 80.
80.
Yeah, 80. I liked it.
Yeah, I'm going to go a little higher than you, but still in that same range, 86. I think this is a strong showing for TV on the radio. Definitely one that you guys should check out. It's going to be one of the better albums of 2011, in our opinion. Tell us what you think. www.velocitiesandmusic.com. What's your favorite TV on the radio album? They have a lot of different sounds on their albums. Which is your favorite? And we really want to get your guys' feedback on 9 Types of Light. So tell us, www.velocitiesandmusic.com, youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. Please check out Ian's Tumblr page. He does written reviews, lots of blog posts there. And that's vimtv.tumblr.com. And if you're not already and you have a Twitter account, we would love to have you follow us on Twitter, because we're on Twitter all the time tweeting at people, having conversations about music, because that's what Velocities and Music is all about. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV, moving music critique forward.